In a poor neighborhood outside Barcelona, half the families lived below the poverty line. Nobody there had ever produced a global superstar. But in the summer of 2007, a boy was born who would change that forever. By 17, he had already won a European championship. By 18, he was chasing the World Cup. This is not a fairy tale. This is Lamine Yamal's real story. A story of poverty, sacrifice, and a talent nobody could ignore. It starts not in a stadium, but in a small, crowded neighborhood called Rocafonda. Streets where kids played football because it was free and it was everything. Nobody there could have guessed one of them would become the youngest scorer in European Championship history. But greatness doesn't always start with money or comfort. Sometimes it starts with a ball, a dream, and a mother who refused to give up. Lamine Yamal was born on July 13, 2007, near Barcelona. His father, Munir, had emigrated from Morocco, looking. His mother, Sheila, had come from Equatorial Guinea, thousands of miles from home. Before he was even born, his parents struggled just to pay rent. Two men helped them through hard times, men named Lamine and Yamal. In gratitude, they named their son after both of them. He grew up in Rocafonda, a working-class neighborhood in Mataró. It was a tight-knit immigrant community, far from the glamour of Camp Nou. When Lamine was just 3 years old, his parents separated. His mother moved to nearby Granollers, but his father stayed close by. Every week, Lamine traveled back and forth between two cities and two homes. He later said he never saw the hard times his mother shielded him from. Despite the distance, both parents showed up for every match they could. His father would sit proudly in the stands, more like a friend than just a parent. Money was tight. Life wasn't easy. But football was always there. And even as a toddler, Lamine had a ball at H. At just 4 years old, he was already turning heads on local pitches. They called him Little Messi before he'd even started school. His football journey began at a small local club called La Torreta. There, coaches noticed something different in how he moved with the ball. He wasn't just fast. He saw the game differently than other kids his age. Word about the boy from Rocafonda began to spread. At just 6 years old, FC Barcelona scouts came to watch him play. What they saw convinced them immediately. Lamine Yamal was invited to join La Masia, Barcelona's legendary academy. For a family with little money, this was a life-changing opportunity. It also meant sacrifice, long train rides, early mornings, and constant travel. His father kept a signed Barcelona shirt as a reminder of those years. It was a gift for all those journeys made just to get him to training. Inside La Masia, Lamine was often the youngest player on the pitch. He regularly played against boys years older than him and held his own. Coaches worked on his positioning and decision-making, but they were careful never to take away his natural instincts. That freedom, that fearless creativity, is what made him special. Even in a factory of talent like La Masia, Lamine stood out. He was climbing through the youth ranks faster than almost anyone before him. Growing up between two homes and two cities wasn't easy for a child, but football gave him structure, purpose, and an escape. While other kids his age were just playing for fun, Lamine was training like a professional. He balanced schoolwork with hours of football, year after year. Rocafonda never left him, even as Barcelona became his second home. He kept the friendships, the streets, and the community that raised him. Half of his old neighborhood lived below the poverty line. He carried that reality with him every time he stepped onto a bigger stage. By his teenage years, Lamine was dominating Barcelona's youth divisions. He was promoted to the Juvenile A team, the final step before the first team. Then coach Xavi Hernandez started noticing him in training sessions. What Xavi saw was a player already too good for youth football. The decision was made to fast-track him toward the senior squad. For a boy from Rocafonda, this was the opportunity of a lifetime. But it also came with enormous pressure most 15-year-olds never face. Every eye in Catalonia was suddenly watching him. There was no room for fear, only football. On April 29, 2023, everything changed. At just 15 years old, Lamine Yamal made his debut for Barcelona's first team. He became the youngest player to appear for the club in over a century. A boy who grew up watching Barcelona from a distance was now wearing the shirt. It wasn't a fluke. He kept earning his place, week after week. Later that year, he made his debut for Spain. At 16, he became the youngest player to ever score for Spain. Records that had stood for generations were falling to a teenager. Fans started comparing him to the greatest players in the club's history. But Lamine stayed grounded, still playing with the same freedom he had as a kid. Every time he scored, he made a hand gesture. 304. It was Rocafonda's postal code, a tribute to where it all began. No matter how big the stage got, he never forgot his roots. Barcelona gave him the club's historic number 10 shirt. It was the number worn by legends before him. The pressure of that shirt would break most young players. For Lamine, it seemed to make him play even freer. By 2024, he wasn't just a promising talent anymore. He was one of the most feared attackers in European football. That summer, Spain entered the European Championship as contenders. Lamine Yamal, still just 16 years old, was named in the squad. Many wondered if he was ready for that level of pressure. He answered every doubt on the pitch. Against France in the semi-final, he curled in a stunning goal. It came just days before his 17th birthday. In doing so, he became the youngest goal scorer in European Championship history. Back home in Rocafonda, the entire neighborhood erupted in celebration. In a small local bar, people who once watched him walk to training now watched him on live television. Spain went on to reach the final, and Spain were crowned champions of Europe. Lamine Yamal was named Young Player of the tournament. He had done it one day after turning 17. A boy from one of Spain's poorest neighborhoods was now a European champion. The world was only just beginning to learn his name. But for those in Rocafonda, they always knew. They just had to wait for the world to catch up. From Rocafonda's streets to the top of European football, after Euro 2024, life for Lamine Yamal changed completely. He became one of the most talked-about young players on the planet. Ballon d'Or conversations began, something almost unheard of for a teenager. Brands, fans, and media all wanted a piece of the new Barcelona star. Yet through all of it, he stayed remarkably unaffected. He still plays with the same joy he had on Rocafonda's streets. Every goal, every celebration, still carries the number 304. He often credits his mother's sacrifices for shielding him from the hardest years. His father remains one of his most visible supporters, cheering from every stand he can reach. In 2026, he continued that rise onto football's biggest stage, the World Cup. He scored on the world stage too, proving Euro 2024 was only the beginning. Every record he breaks adds one more page to a story that started on a cracked concrete pitch. Lamine Yamal's story is proof that where you start doesn't decide where you finish. From a working-class neighborhood where half live in poverty to a World Cup stage. From 2-hour train rides to La Masia to wearing Barcelona's number 10. His story is still being written. He's still a teenager, but he has already given Rocafonda something it never had before. A reason for the whole world to know its name. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more journeys of the players who changed football forever.